Hello, and welcome back to the English Talk community. I'm Julia, and I'm so happy you're here with me today. Whether you're walking to work, sitting on a train, cooking, or simply taking a moment to yourself, thank you for choosing this podcast to be part of your English learning journey. And let me start with an honest question. Have you ever listened to something in English, maybe a podcast, a YouTube video, or even a conversation, and felt completely lost halfway through? Like you understood the first few words, but then suddenly everything started to feel blurry, too fast, or too complicated. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. This happens to almost everyone learning English, even at the intermediate level. The truth is, understanding spoken English is not just about knowing grammar or vocabulary, it's about how your ears and brain work together in real time. And that takes time, patience, and the right kind of practice. Today, I want to show you how something very simple, what I call easy listening, can help you improve your English in a way that feels natural, relaxed, and even enjoyable. You see, we often think that if we want to improve, we need to push ourselves hard. We choose fast, complicated videos, we try to follow native speakers talking at full speed, and we feel guilty when we don't catch every single word. But let me ask you something. When you were a child learning your first language, did you understand everything your parents or teachers said right away? Of course not. You listened again and again. You started by understanding a few words, then more, and slowly your brain began to connect the sounds to meaning. It's the same with English. Listening without pressure is one of the most powerful ways to develop fluency. In today's episode, I'll guide you through that idea of easy listening. I'll explain why it works and how you can use it, even if your schedule is busy, even if you don't feel ready, even if you failed before. Because I believe you haven't failed. You've just been trying strategies that didn't work for you. And that's okay. You're here now, and we're going to make this journey a little easier, step by step. So let me tell you something important. You don't need to understand everything. Yes, I'm saying that clearly. You do not need to understand 100% to improve your English. If you understand the message, the main idea, the feeling behind what someone is saying, that's already a big win. And from there, you build. I know it can be hard to believe that at first. Our brains want clarity and control. But language is not just information. It's connection. It's rhythm. It's tone. When you relax into the process and allow your brain to absorb the patterns, you start to feel the language instead of fighting it. This is why easy listening is so effective. It gives your brain a chance to learn in the background, like a quiet partner walking beside you. The practice becomes less about effort and more about habit. When you listen to clear, slow, and simple English regularly, you begin to notice things, common expressions, natural word order, pronunciation patterns, the music of English. And when those things become familiar, you start to feel more confident, not just in listening, but in speaking too. Now let's take a deep breath together. I want you to pause and think about where you are in your journey. Maybe you've been studying English for a few years. Maybe you can read and write. Well, but when someone talks to you, everything disappears. Or maybe you understand most things, but you're still not confident in real conversations. Whatever your situation is, I want you to hear me. Your experience is valid, your feelings are valid, and your progress, no matter how small it seems, is real. Sometimes we don't notice our own growth because we compare ourselves to others or to a future version of ourselves we haven't reached yet. But learning a language is not a race, it's a relationship. And every time you choose to listen to English, you're strengthening that connection. That's something to celebrate. So I invite you to take this moment to recognize how far you've come. You're here, you're listening, and that means you care. That matters. And before we move deeper into today's topic, I'd love to ask a small favor. If this message resonates with you, if you feel seen or encouraged by anything I've said so far, please consider subscribing to this podcast and leaving a like or rating. That small action helps us reach more learners around the world. And I truly believe we're stronger when we learn together. This is not just a podcast, it's a global community, and your support makes a difference. I want this space to feel safe and real. That's why I speak to you like a friend, not like a teacher with a blackboard. Because I know what it feels like to struggle with a new language. I've worked with hundreds of students, from all over the world. People from Italy, Germany, Portugal, Spain, and beyond. And I've seen one thing again and again. The moment they stopped chasing perfection, everything changed. They started to enjoy English. They made mistakes, they laughed, they kept going, and they grew. So today, let's make a deal. Let's take the pressure off. Let's focus on connection, not perfection. Let's slow down just enough to hear the words, to notice the patterns, and to feel a little more confident with each new sentence. I'll be right here with you, guiding you gently through every step. Let's learn together, with kindness and curiosity. Are you ready? Let's begin. Let me tell you the story of Mark, someone who reminded me how powerful it can be to take the pressure off when we listen to English. Mark is a 34-year-old software developer living in Lyon, France. His job is based in a French company, but they work with teams across Europe, especially in the UK and the Netherlands. That means meetings often happen in English, and Mark always felt a bit anxious about them. Not because he didn't know English, but because he couldn't keep up when people spoke quickly, used idioms, or switched topics without warning. He told me once that he would prepare well for every meeting, but still leave feeling like he had missed something, like he was always trying to catch up. At first, Mark tried to force his listening practice. He would sit at his desk after work, headphones on, notebook open, listening to fast podcasts and trying to write down everything he heard. He downloaded long episodes about business, technology, and productivity, all in English. He paused the audio every few seconds, rewound, took notes, checked new words online. It was intense. And at the end of the day, instead of feeling more prepared, he felt even more tired. He wasn't enjoying the process. He felt like learning English was becoming just another stressful task on his to-do list. One afternoon, after a particularly frustrating meeting, Mark took his dog for a walk. It was a cold, quiet day, and he didn't feel like thinking about work. But as he walked past the park near his apartment, he opened his phone and clicked on a podcast by accident. It was a simple English story, less than 10 minutes long, told in a calm and slow voice. He was too tired to concentrate, but he let it play anyway. No notebook, no pausing, no checking words, just walking and listening. Something changed that day. Mark didn't understand every word, but he understood the story. He got the main idea. He felt the rhythm of the sentences, and for the first time, listening to English didn't feel like hard work. It felt easy, peaceful even. He laughed to himself because he realized how much time he had spent trying to understand everything. And here he was, doing the exact opposite, and finally enjoying the experience. That moment started a new habit for Mark. Every day after work, he walked his dog and listened to short English stories. Some were fiction, others were everyday conversations, interviews, or personal reflections. He didn't choose anything complicated. In fact, he looked for things that felt calm, friendly, and easy to follow. He stopped using subtitles, stopped checking new words right away, and stopped judging himself when he didn't catch a phrase. He simply let the language flow. What surprised him the most was what happened next. After a few weeks, Mark noticed he was picking up new words and expressions without trying. He would hear something in a story and later find himself using it in an email or understanding it during a meeting. The phrases started to sound familiar. His listening improved not because he forced it, but because he created space for his brain to learn in a relaxed way. No pressure, no guilt, just gentle exposure every day. I love this story because it shows something we don't talk about enough: the importance of emotional safety in language learning. When you feel pressured, your brain is in defense mode. It's harder to absorb information, but when you're calm and relaxed, your mind is open. You're more curious, more engaged, and more likely to remember what you hear. Mark learned more by walking his dog and listening freely than he ever did by sitting at his desk trying to force every word into his memory. He told me that now, even when meetings are fast or the vocabulary is technical, he feels more grounded. He may not understand every detail, but he doesn't panic. He trusts that he can follow the conversation and respond in a way that's clear and professional. He also says that his confidence has grown because he stopped trying to be perfect. He started aiming for connection and clarity, not flawless grammar or advanced vocabulary. That mindset shift made a huge difference. So if you ever feel like you're not good enough because you don't understand every single word in English, I want you to remember Mark. I want you to think about that walk through the park in Lyon and how a small change, listening without pressure, led to big results. You don't need to be perfect to make progress. You just need to show up with curiosity and consistency. You can start with something small, just like Mark did. Choose a short, clear story in English, something friendly and easy to follow. Listen to it while walking, cleaning, or relaxing. Let go of the idea that you must understand everything. Focus on the feeling, the rhythm, the tone. Ask yourself, what's the main idea? What emotion do I hear in the speaker's voice? Even if you only catch part of it, that's okay. Your brain is still learning. Sometimes we wait for the perfect time or the perfect level before we begin. But the truth is, progress starts when we stop waiting. When we start listening with openness, not fear. When we treat English not as a problem to solve, but as a language to experience. Mark's journey is a reminder that we can grow by doing less, not more. By listening not to test ourselves, but to connect. By choosing progress over pressure. And most of all, by trusting that even a short walk with a good story can be a powerful step forward. When I talk to learners from around the world, one of the most common things I hear is this: I don't have enough time to practice my English. People tell me they're busy with work, with kids, with school, with life, and I get it. We all have so many responsibilities, and the idea of sitting down for an hour every day to study can feel impossible. But here's the thing I want you to remember. Improving your English doesn't have to be difficult or time-consuming. Sometimes the smallest habit can make the biggest difference. And that's why I always suggest something simple. Just 5 minutes a day of listening practice. Yes, 5 minutes. Not 30, not 60, just 5. That's it. It might sound too easy to work, but the secret is not the length of time. It's the consistency. It's showing up for yourself every day in a small, manageable way. When you, do something often, your brain begins to recognize the patterns of English naturally. Even in 5 minutes, you're training your ears. You're reminding your mind, this matters to me. I'm still growing. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're making your morning coffee. The water is boiling, the smell is filling the kitchen, and while you wait, you press play on a short English recording. Maybe it's a short story. Maybe it's a short conversation between two people. Maybe it's a message from this podcast. Whatever it is, it's clear, calm, and easy to follow. You're not analyzing. You're not taking notes. You're just listening while you stir your drink. That moment, those 5 minutes, become a seed. And seeds, when watered daily, grow into something strong. You could also do this during your commute. Whether you're driving to work, taking the train, walking through the city, or even biking, your ears are free. That's the perfect time to play something in English. If you choose content that matches your level and isn't too fast or too complex, you'll find it much easier to stay present. In fact, the rhythm of your movement and the rhythm of the language can work together. You're learning without feeling like you're studying. And that's a powerful shift. The key is not to stress about understanding every word. That's something I want to say clearly. Understanding 100% is not the goal. And it never has to be. Even native speakers don't understand every word all the time, especially when they're listening to unfamiliar topics or accents. What matters is understanding the message, the idea, the intention behind the words. When you learn to focus on that, you free yourself from a lot of unnecessary pressure. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone says, "Yesterday, I went to the supermarket because I had no food at home, and I bought vegetables, rice, and chicken." Now, maybe you don't know the word supermarket, or maybe you miss vegetables, but you still get the idea. They needed food, they went shopping, they bought some things. That's the message. That's what matters. If you understand the core of what someone is saying, you are communicating. That's a success. And 5 minutes of listening to simple, clear English every day helps you develop that skill naturally. I like to think of language as music. When you listen to a song for the first time, you don't understand every lyric. But if you listen again and again, parts of it stick in your mind. The melody becomes familiar. The chorus stays with you. You may even start singing along without realizing it. That's exactly what happens with English when you expose yourself to it regularly. You start hearing common phrases, word patterns, and sentence structures. Your brain starts singing along, even if you're not speaking yet. To make this easy for yourself, create a small routine. Choose a time in your day that feels light. It could be in the morning before work, during lunch, while folding laundry, or before going to sleep. Make it your 5-minute English moment. Keep it simple. Choose content that feels kind to your mind, not too fast, not too advanced. You can find short podcast episodes, dialogues, or slow English videos made for learners. And if you enjoy what you hear, you're more likely to do it again tomorrow. Another tip is to repeat the same audio more than once during the week. Listening to something familiar helps your brain go deeper. The first time, you might catch just the general idea. The second time, you notice more details. The third time, you start anticipating words before they come. That's when real learning happens. Not by forcing, but by allowing your mind to relax and absorb naturally. I remember talking to a student from Lisbon who worked long hours at a hotel. He told me he used to feel guilty because he couldn't study English in a traditional way. But then he started listening to 5 minutes of English during his break every afternoon. Just 5 minutes. He didn't use a notebook or a textbook, but after a month he noticed he could understand more guests when they spoke English. He didn't memorize lists. He just listened. That simple habit changed his confidence. The point is not to be perfect. The point is to be present. 5 minutes a day keeps your brain in contact with the language. It reminds you that English is not something far away or only for the classroom. It's part of your life now. And over time, those minutes add up. You'll look back and realize that your listening is stronger, your understanding is deeper, and your confidence is higher. All because you showed up for just 5 minutes each day. So if you've been feeling overwhelmed or stuck, I invite you to try this approach. Keep it simple, keep it short, and let it be a moment of peace in your day, not pressure. The beauty of language learning is that it doesn't have to be loud or dramatic. It can be quiet, steady, and kind. 5 minutes. That's all it takes to start building something powerful. Let that be your beginning. Let me share a story that always stays with me because it captures something so simple, but so powerful about learning English. It's about Sophia, a nurse from Madrid, who discovered that repetition was the key to speaking more naturally. When I first met Sophia, she told me that she didn't feel comfortable speaking English at work, even though she had studied it for years. She worked in a large hospital in the center of the city, and she often had to communicate with international patients, especially tourists. She understood them most of the time, but when it was her turn to speak, she would freeze. Words would disappear. She worried about making mistakes, and that worry made her quiet. Sophia wasn't a beginner. She could read and write in English. She could follow instructions, understand emails, and even watch English series with subtitles. But speaking, that was the challenge. She said, "I always feel like I'm about to say something wrong, so I just smile and say less than I want to." And that's something many learners experience. It's not about knowledge. It's about confidence, rhythm, and ease. And those things don't come from grammar rules. They come from practice and repetition. One evening, after a long shift at the hospital, Sophia was scrolling through her phone and found a podcast made for intermediate English learners. The episodes were short, around 5 minutes each, and they used clear, everyday language, conversations between two people, situations from daily life, and little stories that were easy to follow. Something about the simplicity made her feel relaxed, so she listened to one while preparing dinner. She liked the tone, the way the speakers paused between phrases, and how the dialogue sounded like real people talking, not a teacher reading from a book. The next day, she listened to the same episode again, this time while commuting to work on the metro. She noticed that she understood more the second time. A phrase she missed the night before now made sense. A word that sounded strange now felt familiar. She kept listening, and by the fourth time, she realized she could say some of the lines with the speakers. Not perfectly, but close. She was hearing the same sentence again and again, and slowly, it became part of her. Sophia decided to turn this into a habit. Every week, she chose one episode and listened to it several times. In the morning, in the evening, during breaks. Sometimes she played it while brushing her teeth or folding laundry. She didn't stop the audio to study or take notes. She just listened. She let the repetition do the work. And it did. The more she heard the same sentences, the more natural they sounded in her mind. And the more they sounded natural, the easier it was to use them in real life. One day, a patient from Canada asked her a question in English. Without thinking, she responded with a phrase she had heard in one of the episodes. It came out smoothly, almost automatically. She didn't translate. She didn't pause. She just said it. That moment was small, but for Sophia, it felt like a breakthrough. It was the first time she had spoken English at work without feeling afraid. After that, she became more confident. Not because she had memorized vocabulary lists, but because her ears and mouth had started working together. She had heard certain phrases so many times that they lived inside her now. They were ready when she needed them. She told me, "I used to think I had to study hard to speak well, but now I see that just hearing the same things again and again helps me feel ready." That's the beauty of repetition. It doesn't feel like hard work. It's quiet, gentle, and powerful. Your brain loves patterns, and when it hears the same pattern again and again, it starts to expect it, to trust it, to use it. That's how children learn their first language. That's how we remember songs or jokes. And that's how we can build fluency in English, through familiarity. I think of repetition as a bridge. When something is new, it feels far away. We hear it once and we forget. But when we hear it again and again, it comes closer. It moves from our ears into our memory and then into our voice. That's what happened with Sophia. She didn't just learn English, she began to feel it. And that made all the difference. The best part is that this approach works for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're living in Madrid, like Sophia, or in Lisbon, or in Paris, or Munich, or anywhere else. It doesn't matter if you're learning English for work, travel, study, or personal growth. Repetition is free, simple, and always available. You don't need fancy tools. You just need a few minutes and the willingness to return to something more than once. I encourage you to try what Sophia did. Choose a short English audio, maybe one from this podcast, and listen to it more than once. At first, you'll hear the story. Then you'll notice the words, then the sounds, then the rhythm. And maybe, like Sophia, you'll find yourself speaking more naturally, without fear, when the moment comes. It's not magic. It's just repetition. But when you repeat something with attention and kindness, it starts to belong to you. And that's how English becomes part of your everyday voice. One of the most important steps you can take in your English learning journey is choosing the right listening material. It might sound simple, but what you listen to every day has a huge impact on your progress. I've met so many learners who feel stuck, not because they aren't trying, but because they're listening to the wrong type of content for their current level. Sometimes the material is too fast, too advanced, or too technical. Other times, it's not interesting to them, so they stop paying attention after a few minutes. That's why today, I want to help you make better, smarter choices when it comes to your listening practice. Let's start with something very basic but powerful. Your listening material should feel clear, slow, and interesting. If even one of those three things is missing, it becomes much harder to stay motivated and make progress. First, let's talk about clarity. That means the speaker's voice is easy to understand, the pronunciation is not too fast or too mumbled, and the audio is high quality. If the sound is distorted or the accent is unfamiliar, you'll feel frustrated quickly. It's important to train your ears gently, with voices that are kind to your brain. Now, about speed. If you're at an intermediate level, you don't need to listen to native speakers talking at full speed right away. I know some people say, if you want to improve, you have to jump into real English. But let me ask you, what's the point of listening to something you can't follow? That's not helpful. That's not learning. That's punishment. You'll spend the whole time feeling like you're not good enough, when the truth is that the material is just not right for you yet. You can grow your listening skills without making yourself feel small. This is why slow English content exists. It's not for children. It's for learners like you who want to understand more and feel more confident. Some podcasts, audiobooks, and videos are made specifically for language learners, and they use clear pronunciation, simple sentence structures, and everyday vocabulary. That's the kind of content that helps you build strong listening habits. And finally, let's talk about interest. If what you're listening to doesn't grab your attention, you'll start to disconnect. You might still hear the words, but your brain won't be focused. That's why I always suggest choosing topics that feel meaningful or fun to you. Do you like cooking? Then find English content about recipes or food culture. Do you enjoy travel? Try listening to short travel stories or interviews with people who live in different countries. Are you interested in health, education, music, technology? There's something out there for everyone. When you care about the topic, you listen more actively. You become curious. You start to guess what's coming next. And when that happens, your brain starts to make faster connections. You're not just hearing words. You're understanding ideas, emotions, and intentions. That's when real learning happens. Now let me talk about a mistake that many learners make. I've seen it over and over again. They start by choosing very advanced content, news reports, academic lectures, or complicated documentaries. They want to challenge themselves, which is great, but the problem is that these materials are often full of technical vocabulary, idioms, and fast speech. Even native speakers sometimes struggle with this kind of content. So what happens? After a few minutes, the learner feels lost. They try to continue, but they don't really understand. And after a while, they feel discouraged. They think, my English isn't good? Enough. When in reality, the content was just too much for that moment. Another mistake is choosing content that is too long. For example, a 45-minute interview without subtitles, full of slang or cultural references. It's too much information all at once. Your brain can't hold it, especially if you're tired or busy. That's why shorter is better. 5 to 10 minutes of focused listening can give you much more than 45 minutes of confusion. With short content, you can repeat it, go deeper, and feel a sense of completion. That positive feeling keeps you coming back. There's also the mistake of choosing content that doesn't reflect real conversation. Some English learning materials are too formal, too robotic, or outdated. You hear phrases that nobody really uses in real life. That's not helpful either. You want to listen to English that feels alive, that people actually use. That's why I love using short dialogues, real conversations, and stories that include pauses, natural mistakes, and emotion. That's how people speak. That's what helps you get ready for real interaction. If you're not sure where to start, ask yourself a few simple questions. First, do I enjoy this? Second, can I understand at least 50 to 60% of what I'm hearing without using a dictionary? Third, could I imagine listening to this again tomorrow and still learning something new? If the answer to all three is yes, then that's a good choice for you. Another tip is to listen to something once, without stopping, just to get the general idea. Then, if you liked it, listen again the next day. Notice what new details you pick up. Pay attention to how the speaker connects words, how the voice rises and falls, how questions are asked. You don't need to copy everything. Just observe. Let the language sink in. This is how your brain starts to build patterns. I once worked with a student from Hamburg who told me she only listened to English TED Talks. While that helped her vocabulary, she struggled in everyday conversations. The problem was that her listening practice didn't match the kind of English she needed in real life. When we switched to short daily dialogues with natural expressions, she started to feel more confident speaking with colleagues and friends. She realized that the right material makes all the difference. So don't worry about choosing the most popular or impressive resource. You don't need to listen to the BBC or long university lectures if they don't help you. Right now, your goal is not to impress anyone. Your goal is to grow. And growing means choosing something that meets you where you are today, not where you want to be in the future. There's no perfect material. There's only what works for you, what keeps you engaged, what feels friendly to your brain. That's the kind of English that will help you move forward. And when you find it, keep going, keep listening, keep learning in a way that feels good, not heavy. That's how you make real progress. Let me tell you about Thomas, a 27-year-old architecture student living in Berlin. His story always reminds me how powerful it can be to bring emotion and rhythm into your English practice. Thomas had a full schedule, long university days, group projects, and part-time work on weekends. Like many students I've met, he didn't have much time left for traditional studying. He had tried textbooks, online grammar courses, and long video lessons in the past, but they never held his attention for long. He told me once, "It all feels too dry, like I'm learning rules, not language." And that's something I hear from learners all the time. But there was one thing Tomas always made time for: music. Even with his busy life, he never went a day without listening to songs. He especially liked English language music with clear lyrics and emotional melodies. At first, he didn't think of music as a learning tool. It was just something he enjoyed. But over time, something started to shift. He realized that, without even trying, he was understanding more of the lyrics. Certain phrases began to stick. He could anticipate the next line of a song. He could even sing along to entire verses. One afternoon, while working on a university model, he played a song that he had heard many times before. But this time he paused and asked himself, "Why do I understand this now?" He didn't remember studying the words. He hadn't looked them up. But the lyrics felt clear, almost natural. That moment sparked an idea. Maybe music could become more than just background noise. Maybe it could help him connect with English in a deeper way. So Thomas began a small experiment. He picked one song each week, just one. He chose tracks that had clear vocals and meaningful lyrics, nothing too fast or filled with slang. He listened to the same song every day for a week. He didn't force himself to understand everything right away. Instead, he let the music play during walks, while making dinner, or on his way to class. After a few days, he started to hear certain words more clearly. He noticed the pronunciation of sounds, the rhythm of the sentences, the tone behind the voice. He told me that music helped him feel the language, not just study it. English stopped being something cold or academic. It started to feel personal, emotional, human. He connected the words to feelings, to stories, to memories. And that connection made everything more memorable. He wasn't just memorizing vocabulary, he was experiencing the language through sound, rhythm, and emotion. One of the things Thomas enjoyed most was repeating lines from songs out loud. Not reading them from a page, but saying them from memory, with the same tone and flow as the singer. He said it was like speaking English through music. And that's a beautiful idea. When you imitate the rhythm of a song, you're training your mouth, your ears, and your sense of timing, all key parts of speaking fluently. It's not about singing well, it's about feeling how English moves and flows. He also began to write down lyrics by ear, without checking the official words first. This became a fun challenge. Sometimes he got the words wrong, but that didn't bother him. The process helped him listen more carefully. He learned to recognize common words, contractions, and connected speech. Over time, his listening improved in everyday conversations too. He could follow natural speech better because his ears were trained to catch sounds, not just isolated words. There was one song in particular that Thomas listened to over and over. It had a simple message about starting over and finding courage in small moments. The lyrics were short, but full of emotion. He said that song became like a personal mantra, something that reminded him to keep going, even when English felt hard. That emotional connection made the language feel more alive, more real. Eventually, he began to explore other forms of listening, like interviews with musicians or behind the scenes. Stories about how songs were written. He noticed that the same expressions used in songs often appeared in spoken English too. This gave him a strong sense of how language is used in real life, not just in lessons, but in stories, conversations, and feelings. One of the most beautiful parts of Thomas's story is how much his confidence grew. He didn't suddenly become fluent. He didn't wake up speaking perfect English, but he stopped being afraid of it. Music helped him develop a comfort with the language. It became part of his daily world, part of his identity. He no longer saw English as a subject to be tested. He saw it as something he could live with, something he could enjoy. I remember one moment he shared with me. He was at a cafe with a group of students, and someone played a song in English that he knew well. He sang a few lines softly without thinking, and another student asked, "Wow, your pronunciation is great. How did you learn that?" Thomas smiled and said, "I just listen. Lot." That simple moment gave him a huge boost. It made him realize that listening with emotion can lead to speaking with ease. What I love about Tomas's experience is that it shows how learning doesn't always have to feel like studying. Sometimes, the best practice is the kind that doesn't feel like practice at all. When you use music as part of your English routine, you're not just training your brain. You're building a relationship with the language, one that's based on feeling, memory, and rhythm. So if you're someone who enjoys music, think about how you can turn that joy into a tool. Choose songs with clear lyrics and meaningful content. Listen actively. Sing along. Repeat your favorite lines. Pay attention to how the words connect. Let the rhythm guide you. And most of all, enjoy the process. Like Thomas, you might find that music opens a new door to English. A door that leads not just to better understanding, but to a deeper emotional connection with the language itself. One of the biggest shifts I see in my students, the moment when things really begin to change, is when they finally stop trying to speak perfect English and start focusing on speaking clear English. It sounds like a small difference, but it changes everything. And if you're an intermediate learner, stuck somewhere between beginner confidence and advanced fluency, this message is especially for you. I want you to know that clarity is your best friend right now. Not perfection, not speed, not sounding impressive, just clarity. Because when your English is clear, you're understood. And when you're understood, you're communicating. And that is the whole point. Let me ask you something. Have you ever stopped yourself from speaking because you weren't sure if your grammar was perfect? Or maybe you didn't use a more advanced word that you studied, so you felt disappointed after the conversation. I've heard this so many times from learners all over the world, people who are fully capable of expressing themselves, but who freeze or stay silent because they feel their English isn't good enough. They think they need more complex vocabulary, more academic sentence structures, fewer mistakes. But I always tell them the same thing. Even native speakers don't speak perfect English. In real life, most native English speakers use simple, direct language. They use everyday expressions. They often speak in short, clear sentences. They don't stop to think about grammar rules before they talk. They make small mistakes too, repeating words, changing ideas halfway through a sentence, or using you know or like to fill space. But here's the difference. They don't judge themselves for it. They keep going because they're focused on connection, not perfection. And that's what I want for you too. When you focus on being clear, your communication becomes more natural. You speak with more confidence because you're not trying to impress. You're trying to connect. You're trying to share a thought, ask a question, or tell a story. That's where real fluency lives. It's not in the long words or perfect tenses. It's in your rhythm, your tone, your ability to get the message across. That's what people remember about you, not whether your grammar was textbook perfect. I once worked with a student from Milan who had a strong vocabulary and a solid understanding of grammar, but he rarely spoke in meetings at his international job. When I asked him why, he said, "I don't want to sound stupid." That broke my heart because he had so much to say. So we started practicing together with a new focus: clarity over complexity. We worked on saying things in simple, clear English, short sentences, clear structure, everyday words. After a few weeks, he told me, "Now I speak more, and people listen, and that gives me more courage." His English didn't suddenly become perfect, but it became real. And that made all the difference. I want you to try something. The next time you prepare to speak English, whether it's a conversation, a message, or a presentation, ask yourself, what's the simplest way I can say this clearly? Don't try to translate from your native language into something complex. Don't look for fancy words. Just imagine you're explaining it to a friend. Speak like that. That's where fluency begins. When you stop trying to sound perfect and start trying to be clear, you remove a huge amount of pressure. You also become more relaxed. And when you're relaxed, your brain works better. Clear English also means using common structures that are easy to follow. For example, instead of saying, "in accordance with the procedure outlined previously," you can simply say, "as we discussed earlier." Or instead of saying, "should you require any additional information," you can say, "if you need more information." Both versions are correct, but one is clearer and more natural in everyday English. It doesn't make you sound less intelligent. It makes you easier to understand, and that is always a strength. I think one reason learners get stuck at the intermediate level is because they think they're supposed to move toward more and more complicated language. But in real life, the opposite often happens. When you become truly fluent, your English becomes simpler, not harder. You use fewer words to say more. You become more confident choosing the most natural phrase, not the most difficult one. That's what makes people sound fluent, not the size of their vocabulary, but the way they use what they already know. There's also a rhythm to clear English that helps people follow what you're saying. When you pause between ideas, when you emphasize the right words, when you slow down just enough to give your listener time to process, those things help your message land. And they're skills that every learner can develop, no matter their level. You don't need perfect grammar to use rhythm. You just need to be aware, to listen to how English flows, and to practice speaking in a way that feels calm and clear. I remember a nurse from Lisbon who told me she was terrified of giving updates in English during team meetings. She worried about her grammar, her accent, and making mistakes. So we practiced one sentence at a time, focusing on clarity. Not speed, not complexity, just one clear sentence. After a while, she realized that people didn't care about her small errors. They cared about understanding what she was saying. Her updates were clear, and her team could follow her easily. That gave her confidence. She told me, "Now I speak without fear. I just say it simply, and it works." That's the message I want to share with you. You don't need to impress people with your English. You need to connect with them. And connection happens when you're clear. When you stop hiding behind the idea of perfect English, you give yourself permission to show up, to speak, to participate. And little by little, that participation builds real fluency. So the yow? Next time you feel stuck, remember this. Clear is better than perfect. Simple is better than complex. And confidence grows when you allow yourself to be understood, not flawless. English is not a performance, it's a tool. And the best tools are the ones that work when you need them. Focus on being clear, and let your English be something that works for you, not something that holds you back. Julia's story is one that always brings a smile to my face, because it shows how something as simple as a TV series can become a powerful tool for transformation. Julia is a freelance designer from Milan, and when we first spoke, she told me that she had always loved the English language, but felt unsure when it came to speaking. She had taken English in school, followed online classes, and even done some conversation practice. Still, she hesitated when speaking, especially in work situations where she needed to communicate clearly and quickly. She said she felt like the words were trapped somewhere, in her mind, just out of reach. One day, while looking for something light to watch during lunch, she came across a children's series in English. It wasn't something she would normally choose, but something about the slow pace and the friendly tone caught her attention. The characters spoke clearly, the vocabulary was simple, and the situations were everyday moments, things like going to the park, ordering food, or helping a friend. It felt gentle and approachable, and for the first time in a how. While she didn't feel overwhelmed while listening, she watched one episode, then another. She wasn't studying, she wasn't taking notes. She was just watching for fun, letting herself relax and enjoy the language without pressure. But something interesting happened. The more she watched, the more familiar the expressions became. Phrases like, "Can I help you?" "I'm ready," "That's a good idea," started to sound natural. She had heard those phrases many times before, but now they were sticking, not as grammar rules, but as full, living expressions. A few days later, while cooking dinner, she heard herself repeating one of those expressions out loud. No plan, no pressure, just repeating it the way she had heard it in the episode. It felt good. It felt natural. So she started doing that more often. Whenever she heard a phrase she liked, she would pause the show, say it out loud, sometimes even act it out a little. "Thanks for your help." "I don't think so." "Let's do it." These short, simple sentences became part of her daily speech, even when she was alone. That small habit grew into something bigger. Julia wasn't just watching anymore. She was listening actively. She was paying attention to how words were used, how emotions were expressed, and how the rhythm of English worked. It wasn't passive anymore. It was practice. Not formal, not structured, but very real. Every time she repeated a phrase, her brain was learning to connect thought and language. Her pronunciation improved. Her memory for vocabulary grew stronger. But most importantly, her confidence started to rise. She told me that one day she had a video call with a client from the UK. Usually she would prepare a lot in advance, write down notes, worry about making mistakes. But this time, she felt something different. She felt ready. The conversation flowed. When the client asked, "Can we make a few changes to the design?" she responded naturally, "Sure, that sounds good to me." No pause, no stress, just a normal, confident reply. And that moment changed everything. She realized that the English she had been practicing through that children's series was not just useful, it was powerful. Julia began to explore other shows too, but she stayed with simple ones that used daily vocabulary and friendly tones. She wasn't trying to sound academic. She was trying to sound real. And that's exactly what happened. Her sentences became smoother, her rhythm more natural. She didn't feel the need to use complicated grammar or big words. She focused on being clear, friendly, and easy to understand. And her conversations, especially in professional settings, became more relaxed and effective. I think what helped Julia the most was removing the pressure. She allowed herself to go back to something basic, not because she was a beginner, but because she wanted to build a stronger foundation. Sometimes as learners, we believe we have to push ourselves into harder and harder materials. But what Julia discovered is that sometimes the best way to grow is to return to simplicity, to make it easy, to make it enjoyable. She also learned something very important about repetition. By watching the same episodes more than once and hearing the same phrases in different contexts, she began to absorb language in a more natural way. She wasn't just memorizing, she was living the phrases. They became part of her thoughts, her habits, her voice. That kind of learning sticks. It's deep, it's lasting, and it builds real confidence. I loved the way she described it to me one day. She said, "I used to watch English shows like I was outside the window, looking in. Now I feel like I'm inside the house." That image is perfect. Because that's what happens when you go from passive watching to active listening. You stop being a distant observer. You start becoming part of the language. You participate. And when that shift happens, everything changes. If you ever feel stuck, unsure of what to do next in your English practice, take a moment to think about what Julia did. She didn't use a textbook. She didn't memorize long lists. She didn't spend hours doing exercises. She chose something easy and consistent. She listened with attention. She repeated. She played. And slowly, she transformed. That transformation didn't happen because she spoke perfect English. It happened because she stopped trying to be perfect and started trying to be present. She showed up every day for herself. She created small moments of practice. And those moments built her fluency from the inside out. This is one of the questions I hear most often. What should I do when I don't understand everything? And honestly, I love when someone asks me that, because it means they care. It means they're paying attention and trying. But I also know how stressful that situation can feel. You're listening to someone speak English, maybe in a video, in a conversation, or even during a meeting, and suddenly, you realize you missed something. Or worse, you realize you've missed several things. And in that moment, your brain starts to panic. You think, "I don't understand. I'm lost. I'm not good enough." That feeling can be overwhelming. So today, I want to offer you something different. A way to shift your mindset, stay calm, and actually grow from those moments when you don't understand everything. First, let me tell you the truth. No one understands every single word all the time. Not even native speakers. Yes, you heard me right. Even people who grew up speaking English miss things. Maybe someone speaks too fast, uses unfamiliar slang, has a strong accent, or talks about a topic they've never heard of. It happens. And when it does, they don't stop the conversation or give up. They use their skills to stay in the moment and keep going. And you can do that too. Let's start with your mindset. When you don't understand something, your goal is not to fix it instantly. Your goal is to stay engaged. Stay curious. Don't freeze or shut down. Just shift your attention to what you do know. Focus on keywords. These are the words that carry the main meaning of a sentence. Even if you miss the details, the keywords will help you understand the big picture. For example, if someone says, "Yesterday I had a really interesting conversation with my friend about traveling in Japan," and you only catch yesterday, conversation, and Japan, you already have a general idea. You don't need every word to follow the message. That's where context becomes your best friend. Context is everything around the words. The situation, the tone of voice, the topic, the expressions on someone's face, even the environment. If you're watching a video and someone's holding a suitcase and waving goodbye, you don't need to understand every word to know they're probably going on a trip. If you're in a meeting and your colleague shows a chart and says something about increase or growth, you can guess they're talking about progress or results. Your brain is smarter than you think. It's always working with clues. Trust that process. Now let's talk about a strategy that many people forget. Guessing. Yes, guessing is not only okay, it's necessary. When you guess the meaning of a word or sentence based on the information you have, you're using one of the most powerful tools in language learning. You're training your brain to connect ideas, not just memorize definitions. So the next time you hear an unfamiliar word, don't panic. Ask yourself, what's the topic? What words came before and after? What's the tone? Does the person sound happy, confused, excited? All of this helps you make a good guess. And that guess is often enough to keep the conversation going. When you're speaking and you feel stuck because you don't understand something, use simple communication tools. One of them is asking for clarification in a relaxed way. You don't need to apologize or feel embarrassed. You can say, "Could you repeat that, please?" Or, "Sorry, I didn't catch that." These are common, natural phrases. People use them all the time, including native speakers. Another great tool is body language. When you don't have the perfect word, your hands, face, and gestures can help you express what you mean. If you're looking for the word umbrella and can't remember it, you can mime opening one. Most people will understand. Communication is not just words. It's presence, tone, movement, and intention. One thing I always remind my students is this: communication is a two-way process. It's not just about you understanding perfectly, it's about creating understanding together. If both people are patient, open, and willing to adjust, you can have a meaningful conversation even if the grammar isn't perfect or if some words are missing. In fact, these moments of imperfection often lead to the most memorable human interactions. I once worked with a student from Lisbon who told me he felt terrible every time he didn't understand someone. He felt like a failure. We worked together to change that mindset. I told him, next time, instead of saying, "I don't understand," try saying, "Can you explain that in a different way?" Or, "I think I got most of that, but can you say the last part again?" It changed everything for him. He realized he didn't have to understand everything to keep the conversation moving. He just needed to stay curious, stay calm, and ask the right questions. There was also a woman from Munich I remember clearly. She used to get very nervous in group conversations, especially when several people were speaking quickly. She thought everyone was smarter or more fluent than her. But when we started listening to short dialogues together, we practiced listening for meaning, not for individual words. She learned to relax, to focus on the message, and to let go of the need to understand every single sentence. Slowly, she started enjoying English conversations more. She began to notice how people repeated themselves, clarified their ideas, and used body language. All things that helped her follow along without understanding every word. And that's what I want for you. I want you to know that struggling to understand something doesn't mean you're bad at English. It means you're doing the work of real communication. It means you're learning. It means you're moving forward. So here's something you can try the next time you don't understand everything. Pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, what's the topic? What are the key words I've heard? What clues do I have from the tone, the speaker's face, or their gestures? Can I make a guess? Can I ask a friendly question to clarify? Can I stay curious and keep listening without judging myself? These questions are simple, but they open the door to better understanding and stronger confidence. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to keep showing up. Keep listening. Keep trying. And every time you stay in the moment, even when it's confusing, you're building a stronger relationship with English, one that's based on real understanding, not just words. And that kind of understanding is what makes you a confident, connected speaker. Today, I want to leave you with a gentle challenge, something simple but powerful that you can start right now. It doesn't require hours of study or complicated exercises. All I'm asking is this: choose one easy English audio today and listen to it for just 5 minutes. No subtitles, no trying to understand every single word, no pressure at all. Just listen. Let the sounds, the rhythm, and the flow of English wash over you. Let your brain absorb the language naturally. That's it. 5 minutes. Maybe you'll pick a short story, a simple podcast episode, a conversation between friends, or even a song with clear lyrics. The key is to choose something that feels approachable and enjoyable for you, something that you look forward to hearing again. If you do this once today, you're already making progress. But here's where the real magic happens. Try to do this every day for 1 whole week, just 5 minutes a day. I promise you, by the end of the week, you'll notice a difference. You might find that you understand more than before, that certain words or phrases become familiar. You might catch yourself smiling when a sentence sounds just right, or nodding because you get the meaning without translating. Your confidence will grow because you are training your ears and your mind to be comfortable with English. You're creating a habit that turns learning from something difficult into something natural. This challenge is not about perfection or speed. It's about showing up for yourself and your English every single day, even in a small way. Fluency is not a destination you reach and then stop. It's a daily practice, a way of living with the language. It's about consistent steps, small moments, and patience with yourself. That's the real path to success. I want you to remember that you're part of a community here, a global community of people just like you, learning, struggling, and growing together. We are all on this journey side by side, sharing our stories, our challenges, and our victories. If this message speaks to you, I encourage you to subscribe to our podcast or channel. That way, you won't miss any of our episodes designed to support and inspire you. By staying connected with us, you'll have a place to come back to, a safe space where you can keep practicing and improving. You'll hear stories from other learners like Mark, Sophia, Thomas, Julia, and many more who show us that progress is possible no matter where you start. You'll get practical tips, encouragement, and a reminder that you are never alone in this. So take a deep breath, choose that easy audio, press play, and listen for 5 minutes, then do it again tomorrow and the day after. Keep going gently, kindly, and with curiosity. Your English will grow, your confidence will grow, and little by little, speaking English will feel less like a challenge and more like a part of who you are. Thank you for listening today. I'm Julia, and I'm so glad to be part of your English journey. Let's keep learning together, one step at a time.